Good evening, everyone. All right. Okay. So,
You on? I don't hear you.
okay. Am I on now? Okay. Yay. Okay. Can you all hear me now?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. So this summer quarter, we're going through the book of Numbers and the different troubles in the book of Numbers that the Israelites face. Last week, Josh discussed how in Numbers chapter 14, Moses sent the 12 spies into the land of Canaan. They scoured out the land, came back, and gave a bad report of the land of Canaan, going, yeah, the land of Canaan is flowing with milk and honey, it's the promised land, but there's giants, and we can't defeat them. Which, this bad report leads to an uproar, and this riot, rebellion, leads to God going, okay, if you want to play that game, I'm going to send you into the desert to die, because that's what you've been complaining about for the last 10 chapters. So off you go, and then the children that you claimed were going to be prisoners of war and slaves, they're going to be the ones that are going to conquer the land of Canaan, which that happens in the book of Joshua. So into the wilderness they go to serve out their 40-year sentence, and they're none too happy about it, clearly. So tonight we're going to be going into Numbers chapter 16, and we're going to study the character of a man named Korah. Do any of you know who Korah is or remember anything about him? Just anything at all? This is going to be a little bit discussion-based, so.
I think he's in the book of Numbers.
You think he's in the book of Numbers. Thanks, Josh. Okay.
What is the chapter?
Numbers chapter 16. You're welcome.
Was he the one that was
Levi.
ugly to a king?
Ugly to a king? No.
His wife saved him.
Yes, there are several people in the Bible who got saved by their wives. I can make a montage for you at the end of my tenure here. But anyway, Korah was a Levite. He was from the clan of Kohath, which is like Kohath was a son of Levi. Levi was the tribe, and his sons were the sub-tribes, if you will, or clans. They're all Levites, but they have different families. And this man, Korah, and with two others, Dathan and Abiram, who are Reubenites, took 250 well-known men, leaders of the congregation of Israel, and said to Moses and Aaron to their face that their tyranny was at an end. In Numbers chapter 16, verse 3, they say this, "You have gone too far, for all in the congregation are holy, every one of them. The Lord is among them. Why do you then exalt yourself above the assembly of the Lord?" Basically, they said that Moses and Aaron had unjustly put themselves above the rest of the Israelites, God's people. Now, do we ever feel this way? Do we ever feel like someone above us has, for one reason or another, been unjust to everyone else by cutting someone down in order to get ahead, or some other way of beating people down and oppressing them and putting themselves in a leadership position or place of authority? Well, I've had that experience from time to time, and it is frustrating to be the most polite way to say it. So let's dissect Korah's argument here. Now, what's wrong with his argument? Because clearly, if he's rebelling against Moses and Aaron, who are prophets of God, there's something must be wrong with Korah's statement. He starts with, "For all in the congregation are holy, every one of them, and the Lord is among them." Well, this sentence is taken out of context in the book of Exodus, where Moses at Mount Sinai says that you, Israel, are a chosen people and a holy nation. What he means by this is saying that out of all the nations of the world, God chose the nation of Israel to be his people and to be the example of what it means to have a people serve God. Which, clearly from the book of Numbers, that's not going too well. But that's just my 2 cents worth. It goes on to, in this little argument here, it goes on to go that they want to take in charge of the priesthood. Because if everyone's holy, then they should be priests. That's not necessarily the case. Okay, but people following God still need a mediator between God and man. But why is that the case? Well, the reason is because of sin separates us humans from God. God is a perfect God. There is no impurities in him, which man, being a sinful creature, thanks to the fall, can no longer be perfect. So now there's a wall of separation between God and man. There needs to be someone to bridge the gap between the two. In this situation in the Old Testament, that would have been the Levitical priesthood under the leadership of Aaron and his sons. For us Christians today, that'd be the sacrifice of Jesus' death on the cross and the indwelling of the Holy Spirit within us. That's our mediator between God and us. Back then, that wasn't the case, and we have Aaron. So, there's the gist of what is wrong with Korah's argument. But, so if you were in Moses' shoes, or sandals, I just realized that shoes weren't invented yet, what would you respond to Korah's argument? Korah is basically going, the entire system that has been set up by God, that is headed by you, at least from what the people can see, is wrong. How would you respond to that? Give me a few answers here. How would you respond to this kind of statement? Anyone? Or is it just Mondays on a Wednesday feeling?
I think most of the time we'd want to get defensive and try to prove why we aren't the ones that say, you know what I mean?
Right.
Try to prove ourselves.
You get defensive and try to prove yourself. Okay, I think I saw a hand back at this table. No? Okay. Just checking. Well, I know for a fact that if this was me, I'd say something pretty smart, like trying to cut down Korah and his argument by going, no, you're dumb, and this is why, because God has chosen us and he did not choose you. Deal with it. But thankfully, Moses didn't do that yet. Let's look at his response in verses 4 through 5. When Moses heard it, he fell on his face and said to Korah and all his company, "In the morning the Lord will show who is his and who is holy, and will bring him near to him. The one whom he chooses, he will bring near to him, going, 'This isn't my decision. God is the one who will decide who is the one to be before him.'" So, what kind of sticks out to you in this response? Even though it is kind of convoluted in structure, what kind of sticks out to you about this compared to what we would normally say or do at such a response?
What Moses did was to humble himself.
He humbled himself? Yeah. Actually, that was right on where I was going to go with this. But let's say there are multiple angles that we can look at this. Are there any others?
He turns it around a little bit and says, "Let the Lord decide."
He's the only one that would go, "Let the Lord decide," and not, "Here, I'm right, you're wrong," kind of deal. Okay. Well, so Moses responded in humility and put God first in this confrontation with Korah, rather than putting himself first. The next couple of verses, which is a little bit lengthy for me, so I'll just condense it right here. Moses said that there'd be a test tomorrow, the next day. Korah, with his 250 men, and Aaron, both groups will take censers, put fire and incense on them, ways to bring sacrifices to a god or a deity, and stand before the Lord at the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle. And the man whom the Lord chooses will be holy, or high priest. So that's kind of interesting. But after the terms of the test are established, going, okay, here's a test, it's pass or fail. Korah and your group, Aaron and his, Aaron will take censers, and God will decide who's the winner, who's the loser. He sends this terms of the test to Korah's co-conspirators, Dathan and Abiram. And actually, I skip down way too far. Let's go back, Caleb. Let's go to verse 8. After he sets up the terms, he then draws his attention to Korah particularly, and says this, "And Moses said to Korah, 'Hear now, you sons of Levi.'" I'm going to assume there are other Levites with Korah's particular group. Is it too small of a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel? Now remember that the Levites were chosen out of the 12 tribes to be in charge of the tent of meeting, or the tabernacle, and later the temple. They were in charge of the religious duties of Israelite culture. So in other words, be grateful for the responsibilities God gave you Levites, and try and focus on that. And continuing on, to bring you near to himself, to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them. And he has brought you, the Levites, near to him, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you, and you would seek the priesthood also. Therefore, it is against the Lord that all you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you grumble against him? Meaning, this kind of means basically be careful of what you complain about and who do you complain to. Because often to complain against a member of God's leadership is to grumble and complain against God himself. God set everything up, and you're grumbling about what God did in putting Aaron in the priesthood. Or at least that's what it means in the confines of this passage. So I'm just going to reread over this little section one more time, and then I'm going to ask for you guys to give me some feedback. So I'm giving you a heads up here real quick. Okay. Moses said to Korah, "Hear now, you sons of Levi. Is it too small a thing for you that the God of Israel has separated you from the congregation of Israel, to bring you near to him, to do service in the tabernacle of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to minister to them? And he has brought you near to him, and all your brothers, the sons of Levi, with you? And would you seek the priesthood also? Therefore, it is against the Lord that you and all your company have gathered together. What is Aaron that you grumble against him?" What kind of sticks out to you from this little monologue from Moses to Korah?
Well, Korah and his people have already been elevated into their keepers of the tabernacle, and so they are in some sense elite among the rest of the people. And what Moses is saying to them is, hey, you got a good position. God's done a lot for you. Why are you not happy? Why do you want more?
Right. Okay. That's exactly what I was going with this. Anyone else? Just to throw their 2 cents. Did I see a hand back here?
Well, Moses didn't want the leadership.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Moses didn't want that.
His father-in-law convinced him to select him to take over at various levels of court.
Yeah. The court system was not Moses' idea, but it was his father-in-law, and it was pronounced good, and it was put into effect.
They were put in charge of a big thing, not a small thing. This was God's word that they were supposed to administer. All the people.
Right.
Every one of them. This was not a small thing that they were getting away from.
Yes. And if I had the foresight, I would have brought a diagram of how Israel's campsite was set up. The entire tabernacle where the was at the very center, like the bullseye of Israelite structure, with the Levites around the target, so to speak. So they're in charge of the center of Jewish Israelite culture, figuratively and literally, when you look at how they're all set up. So good point there. What I find interesting about at least the first part of Moses' reprimand to Korah and his followers is that Korah himself is from the clan of Kohath. A little bit of reading through Leviticus and Google, I found out that the tribe. I can't believe I said that out loud.
Well, if it was on Google.
If it was on Google, then it's right. Yeah. But the clan of this particular clan, the Kohathite clan, was in charge of the keeping up with the sacred items in the tabernacle. These sacred items were not to be seen by the general public. These kind of sacred items would include the Ark of the Covenant, the sacrificial altar, which that Aaron and his sons would make sacrifices to on particular holy days, and a menorah lampstand to show that God's light is eternal. All of this stuff. And normally, if you were to see this stuff, you would be put to death. And it was up to the Kohathite clan to maintain them, make sure they're clean. And whenever Israel was on the move, Aaron and his sons would put coverings over them so that the rest of Israel would not be able to see them and die because rules. And it was the Kohathites that were commanded to carry these things from place to place wherever Israel roamed. So Kohath, the clan of Kohath, was given an immense honor by being able to carry the sacred items of God in his tabernacle. And a portion of their duty is found in Numbers chapter 3, verses 31 through 32. It's not going to be on the screen, so if you want to look that up, or flip to it, scroll through it, you can do that. Okay, and there, the Kohathite clan duty involved the ark, the table, the lampstand, the altars, the vessels of the sanctuary with which the priests ministered, and the screen, which was the dividing wall between the Holy of Holies, where the Ark of the Covenant was itself, and the rest of the holy place. All the services connected with these, and Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, was to be chief over the chiefs of the Levites, and had oversights over who kept guard over the sanctuary. They were in charge of making sure everything was maintained, including the Ark of the Covenant, which in Israelite culture is the physical embodiment of God's dwelling on earth among the Israelites. So this was very important stuff. And it was with this privilege that Korah and his fellow Levites were squandering when they were charging Aaron and Moses that they were overstepping their boundaries and not seeing how they were blessed with the role that God gave them over all the Israelites. So, why do you think that they were discontent with the role God assigned to them? And why do we or let's put it into modern context, why do we as Christians struggle with being content with with our given responsibilities? Why do we struggle sometimes with the blessings that God gave us? I'll give you a little bit of time to discuss at your tables with that one. So, good. Do you want me to repeat the question because I was a bit complicated? Okay. So the Korah and his rebellion was squandering their blessing given by God. So how do we as Christians struggle with being content with the responsibilities that we have been given, such as keeping God's word and spreading God's word to others? Discuss. Time to roughly discuss what the so what were some of the answers that y'all came up with? Just raise a hand or just start talking and I'll figure out where you are. Yes.
I kind of think we talked about that, I think that Korah and his followers and the other guys, that and them, they had a lot of envy toward Moses because they thought Moses was just sitting around doing that while they were in the desert or whatever. But the reason they were in the desert was because of their actions before.
Yeah.
But really, it wasn't Moses really telling them what to do. Moses was just passing messages on.
Right.
So I think they had a lot of envy. They had this great position where they're supposed to take care of this stuff and then minister to the whole community. Well, if they're going to do all that, why don't they just do everything and take Moses' place too?
Yeah, Moses, from their point of view, kind of had the glamour job of being
so
able
I
to
think
be
they
the
had a lot
speaker.
of envy. And in those days, people pass things to their family. So if your position was this, you pass that to your son.
So, yeah, really good answer. Anyone else?
Well, it's kind of human nature, always want to do better.
Human nature to always do
For
better?
your family or whatever. I mean, if they think it's a little bit better, they want to.
Right. A little bit of maybe jealousy of wanting the better position. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I agree with both answers wholeheartedly that it was one part envy, one part jealousy of Moses has the glamour job of being the messenger while they neglected the fact that they got to carry the most sacred items in Jewish culture. And they were squandering that because Moses had the glamour job of being the messenger between God and man in Israel. So, and I just want to, so there's that part. But this last part, the last sentence in Moses' reprimand, which is, what is Aaron that you should, what was it called? Who is Aaron? What is Aaron that you grumble against him? That part kind of struck me as odd. I don't have a brother to speak of, but I do have a family friend that are like brothers to me, and we throw each other under the proverbial bus all the time, messing with each other, harassing. But this just seems kind of odd, in an odd placement when it's in the context of someone's trying to, these Korah and his rebellion is actively antagonizing Moses and Aaron. Why now throw your brother under the bus, so to speak, or under the camel, I guess, in this case, and say that? Well, and I just lost all of you. Oh well. So, well, when I kind of dug a little bit deeper, because that seemed weird, in both cases between Aaron and the Kohathite clan, Korah's family, God chose them and assigned them to do a specific task. Aaron didn't put himself forward and go, oh, I will be the high priest and my sons Eleazar and all of them will be the priests after me. No, they did. Aaron and his sons did nothing. Neither did the Kohathite clan. God assigned them to their duties. It was God who made the decision by his own choosing and not by the decision of others. If God had chosen it differently, it would have been someone else who was the high priest. So who is Aaron? He's a nobody. It was all God's choosing. So it's still the argument of you're arguing against God. Why are you arguing against this one person when God made the decision? So after telling off Korah and his fellow Levites, then Moses sends the message to Korah's two co-conspirators, Dathan and Abiram. And in verses 12 through 14, we kind of get Dathan and Abiram's response to the argument of the test of all the priests, Korah and his rebellion, and Aaron are going to give sacrifices, and God will choose who's the priest. Their response was this: we, Dathan and Abiram, will not come up. Is it a small thing that you have brought us up out of the land of flowing with milk and honey to kill us in the wilderness, that you must make yourself that you must also make yourself a prince over us. Moreover, you have not brought us into a land flowing with milk and honey, nor given us inheritance of fields and vineyards. Will you put out the eyes of these men? We will not come. And with that, they stayed home. Do we ever dig our heels in, and even when we are proven wrong? Because in chapter 12, it wasn't Moses' decision to banish the Israelites into 40 years of wanderings in the desert. It was God's decision based off of what the fellow Israelites were doing. They complained and grumbled and were afraid, and God said, okay, I've had enough. You need a time out, so to speak. And like a stubborn little child, Dathan and Biram going, no, and going, why? You promised us this. Why are we not getting this? Even though it was their decisions that led them to this punishment. So, a little bit of a shameless plug bit. The showdown part of what happens between Korah and his rebellion and what happens to Dathan and Abiram is going to be next week because I wasn't allowed to get to the fun part. Just how that worked out scheduling wise.
Man, that camel's pretty heavy.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. So from what we've read so far, what have you noticed that is interesting about Korah's rebellion? Either the rebellion itself, or why they were doing it, or Moses' response? What stood out to you?
Is what I was kind of thinking. Is maybe it runs deeper than that, because Moses was raised under the house of Pharaoh for X amount of years, and now he's under God and the entitled guy, and so I wonder if sometimes they have some envy over that. And then that one statement he mentioned, are you prince over us? So I kind of wonder maybe there's a little bit of
one big envy
that going
problem.
on. And then when I thought, when he said, who is Aaron or what is Aaron, he was suffering with them. So why are you dropping that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, it's one big long chapter of envy.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah, that they got away from Egypt where they were all slaves, and now all of a sudden it was land of milk and honey, when before they were grumbling and not happy there. So
Just one bad thing leads to another, and they're still griping about it.
I was thinking that's probably where that commandment came from. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's possessions.
Okay.
That's pretty much what they're doing. So it showed up in the top 10.
Yeah. Thou shalt not covet. Read Numbers 16. I saw a hand back here.
We do have to humble ourselves anytime we become a follower or an obedient servant or anything, because God did give us free will. And a lot of times we want to exert that free will and say, you're not the boss of me. So sometimes it's really hard to step back and be humble and know that someone else is better qualified to lead us at that point in time than ourselves.
One thing I thought was interesting is they were short-sighted, or whatever you want to call it, because they said that we're supposed to be a land of milk and honey. This is the tribe of Levi. They got 10%, basically, of what everybody else got. They were so short-sighted, they did not realize everybody else had the same thing they did.
Part of the rules of Israelite culture was they gave 10% to God, and that 10% was distributed to all of Levi. So they almost got the cream of the crop every time, but so they got the cream of the crop of the punishments as well, and the responsibilities to go with it. They got the job without working for it?
Serve God and they take care of you.
And you can't. And are you saying that they just kind of became big-headed about the fact that everyone took care of them, that they should be the ones with more power and authority? Is that what I think? Okay, just making sure. So, actually, that's it. Okay. Anyone else before I go to? No? Okay. So, personally, I find it interesting that Korah, I'm going to mess this up, Korah and his fellow Levites cared so little about their blessing from God that they got to look after the most holy items in Jewish worship, that they became they only were interested in the power that other people had. The envy and arrogance of it all. But I can't help but think, don't we do that sometimes? We kind of get used to what the normal is and start looking at the greener pastures farther and farther away from where we're supposed to be. Most of the troubles in the book of Numbers had always been something about everything was better in Egypt, and why with Egypt and slavery being the good old days. But in this particular chapter, it seems that we have a man here who's lusting after power and authority in the flashy role of another, rather being humbled with the glory that they were given by God in their position in life. We must be able to appreciate what God has given us and be submissive to authority, especially if that authority has been put in place by God. And because that person, whoever it is, right, wrong, they were there for a reason. And we must be able to respect that, because we have to be put accountable for what we do and say, and especially when we ourselves are in a leadership position, because all of these people were people in authority. And we're all technically in authority position because we have been entrusted with God's word. We have the very living words of God in our heart. So we have to be able to submit to the authority within our church and our work, school, whatever may be your particular lot in life, to be able to be humble and not become short-sighted over the flashy title of another. And with that, I'll let you out about 5 minutes early. So we're dismissed.